The night sky over Aerith 7 was never truly dark. Two moons hung low, casting pale blue light across the rocky wasteland. Sunho sat outside his small medical station, drinking cold tea and watching the stars. It was quiet here. That was why he had come to this forgotten planet at the edge of known space. Quiet was good. Quiet meant no more death, no more war, no more screaming patients he could not save. He had been a military medic once during the colony wars. He had seen too much. Now he ran a tiny clinic for miners and colonists, treating broken bones and coughs and the occasional knife wound from bar fights. It was simple work. It was peaceful. The peace broke at exactly 3 in the morning. A streak of fire tore across the sky, bright as a second sun. Sunho jumped to his feet, his tea spilling across the dirt. The object screamed through the atmosphere, trailing smoke and flames. It was a ship, a small one but moving far too fast. It disappeared behind the mountains to the north, and seconds later, the ground shook with the impact. Sunho stood frozen for a moment. His training told him to stay put. Protocol said to report crashes and wait for the authorities. But the authorities were 3 days away by transport, and whoever was in that ship would be dead long before then. He grabbed his medical bag and ran to his old speeder. The toxic storm season had begun, and yellow clouds of poison gas drifted through the valleys. Sunho pulled his breathing mask tight and pushed the speeder to its limit. The crash site was not hard to find. A trail of burning debris led up the mountainside like a path of fire. The ship had carved a long scar through the rock before stopping against a cliff wall. It was unlike any vessel Sunho had seen before. The metal was smooth and black, covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly even through the flames. This was not a human ship. This was not even close. Sunho approached carefully. The hull had been torn open in several places. Through one of the gaps he saw movement. Someone was alive inside. He climbed through the wreckage, cutting his hands on sharp metal edges. The interior was filled with smoke and the smell of burning chemicals. Emergency lights flickered red, and there, slumped against a broken console, was a woman. At least she looked like a woman. Her skin was pale, almost white, and her hair was silver like moonlight. Strange markings covered her arms and neck, glowing faintly blue before flickering and going dark. She wore armor of some kind, but it had been torn apart, and beneath it, Sunho saw the wounds. Plasma burns across her chest and stomach, deep cuts on her arms as if she had tried to defend herself. Her ribs were clearly broken, pushing against her skin at wrong angles, and the blood pooling beneath her was not red. It was silver, bright and shining like liquid metal. She was dying. Sunho did not hesitate. He dropped to his knees beside her and opened his medical bag. His hands moved automatically, years of training taking over. He did not know her biology. He did not know if human medicine would help or hurt her, but he knew that if he did nothing, she would be dead in minutes. He worked through the night. The plasma burns were the worst. He cleaned them as best he could and applied burn gel, hoping it would work on whatever she was made of. Her ribs needed to be set, so he did it the old way, with his hands and bandages, while she screamed in pain without waking. The silver blood would not clot like human blood, so he had to seal the wounds with medical glue and pray. She woke once near dawn. Her hand shot up and grabbed his wrist with a strength that shocked him. Her eyes opened, and Sunho felt his breath catch. Her eyes were not normal. They were deep purple, filled with swirling patterns like galaxies spinning in endless space. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Her voice was weak but sharp, filled with suspicion. "Saving your life," Sunho said simply. "Now hold still. You have 3 broken ribs and I need to wrap them." She stared at him. Those galaxy eyes studied his face as if searching for something hidden. A lie, a motive, a trick. "You are human," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." "Why would a human help me?" Sunho paused his work and looked at her. She was clearly not from Earth or any human colony. She was something else entirely, something powerful probably, something dangerous maybe. But right now, she was just a woman bleeding on the floor of a crashed ship. "Because you are hurt," he said, "that is enough reason." She did not respond. Her grip on his wrist slowly loosened and her eyes closed. She fell back into unconsciousness, but her breathing was stronger now. The bleeding had stopped. Sunho finished his work as the sun rose over the mountains. He carried her out of the wreckage and loaded her onto his speeder. She weighed almost nothing, as if her bones were hollow like a bird. The journey back to his station was slow and careful. Every bump in the road made him worry he would break her again. He put her in the only bed in the clinic, the one he used for patients who needed overnight care. Then he sat in a chair beside her and watched. Her wounds were stable, but he did not know what else might be wrong inside her. He did not even know if she would survive the day. Hours passed. She did not wake, but she did not die either. Her breathing remained steady. The blue markings on her skin began to glow again, faintly at first, then stronger. That seemed like a good sign. Minyu arrived in the afternoon. He was Sunho's only real friend on this planet, a fellow outpost worker who maintained the mining equipment nearby. He walked into the clinic with a bottle of cheap alcohol and stopped dead when he saw the woman in the bed. "What the hell is that?" he asked. "A patient," Sunho said. "That is not human." "No." Minyu walked closer, staring at the silver blood on the bandages, the strange markings, the unnatural beauty of her face. "Where did you find her?" "Ship crashed in the mountains last night." "And you just brought her here?" Sunho shrugged. "She was dying. What was I supposed to do?" Minyu opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. He knew Sunho. He knew there was no point in arguing. When Sunho decided to save someone, that person got saved. It was that simple. "Do you even know what species she is?" Minyu asked. "No." "Do you know if she is dangerous?" "Probably." "Do you know anything about her at all?" Sunho looked at the woman in the bed. She looked peaceful now, her face relaxed in sleep. But he remembered those eyes. Those galaxy eyes, old and deep and filled with secrets. "I know she was hurt," he said. "I know she needed help. Everything else we will figure out when she wakes up." Minyu sighed and sat down beside him. "You are going to get us both killed one day, you know that." Sunho smiled slightly. "Maybe, but not today." They sat together in silence, watching the strange woman sleep, waiting for answers that would change everything. 3 days passed before the woman opened her eyes again. Sunho was changing her bandages when it happened. He had developed a routine by now. Clean the wounds, apply fresh medicine, check her vital signs with equipment that probably gave wrong readings for her species. He worked gently, carefully, as he always did with patients. Her hand caught his wrist again, the same iron grip. "You are still here," she said. Sunho did not flinch. "This is my clinic, where else would I be?" She released him and tried to sit up. Pain flashed across her face and she fell back against the pillow. Her body was healing faster than any human could, but she was still weak. The wounds had been too severe. "Do not move yet," Sunho said. "Your ribs are still mending." "How long have I been unconscious?" 3 days. Something changed in her expression. Fear maybe, or urgency. 3 days, they will be searching for me by now. "Who?" She did not answer. Instead, she looked around the small room. It was not impressive. A single bed, a cabinet of medical supplies, a window showing the barren landscape outside. Simple, poor, primitive by any galactic standard. "Where am I?" she asked. "Aerith 7, frontier planet, edge of human space." "Human space," she repeated. Her voice carried a strange tone, as if the words were foreign to her. "I crashed in human territory." "You crashed in my backyard specifically. Lucky for you, I am a medic." She turned those galaxy eyes on him again, studying, analyzing, searching for something she clearly could not find. "You saved me," she said. "Why?" Sunho sighed. He had expected this question again. "I already told you you were hurt." "That is not a reason. That is a description." "It is the only reason I have." She fell silent, watching him as he continued his work. He removed the old bandages, cleaned the healing burns, applied fresh wrappings. His movements were gentle but confident. He had done this thousands of times before. "You are not afraid of me," she observed. "Should I be? Most beings would be." Sunho shrugged. "You are my patient. Being afraid of my patients does not help them heal." She did not respond to that. He finished his work and stepped back, washing his hands in a small basin. "I am going to make food," he said. "You should eat. Your body needs energy to repair itself." "I do not eat human food." "Then you will be very hungry, because human food is all I have." He left before she could argue. In the small kitchen area, Sunho prepared a simple meal: rice, vegetables, some dried meat that had seen better days. Frontier living was not glamorous. He divided the food into 2 portions, giving her the larger share without thinking about it. When he returned, she was sitting up. She had managed it through sheer will, though her face was tight with pain. "I told you not to move," he said. "I do not take orders." "Then take advice. Moving too much will tear your wounds open, and I just spent 3 days closing them." He handed her the bowl. She looked at it with suspicion, then back at him. "You are giving me your food," she said. "We share food on Earth. It is normal." "You share equally with a stranger." "You are not a stranger anymore. You have been living in my clinic for 3 days. That makes you a guest." She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she took the bowl and began to eat. Her movements were careful, elegant, as if even eating was a formal act for her. But Sunho saw her eyes widen slightly at the first bite. "It is not poisoned," he said, "in case you were wondering." "I was not. If you wanted me dead, you would have left me in the ship." They ate in silence. Outside, the wind howled across the empty landscape. Another storm was coming. Over the next few days, Yura began to heal. That was the name she finally gave him, just Yura, nothing more. She refused to explain where she came from or who had attacked her. She refused to explain the strange markings on her skin that seemed to pulse with inner light. She refused to explain anything at all. But she asked questions, many questions. "Why do you live here alone?" "I am not alone. Minyu visits regularly." "That is one person. On my world, isolation is a punishment." Sunho was quiet for a moment. "On Earth, it can be a choice. I came here to find peace." "Peace from what?" "War, death, memories I do not want to keep." She studied him with those endless eyes. "You are a healer who has seen war." "I was a military medic, colony wars 10 years ago." "And now you hide at the edge of the galaxy, treating minors." "I am not hiding, I am living." "There is no difference." Sunho smiled slightly. "Maybe, but this is the life I chose." Yura seemed to consider this. She asked more questions over the following days. Why did the colonists help each other rebuild after storms? Why did parents sacrifice comfort for their children? Why did Sunho share his limited supplies with someone who had given him nothing in return? Every answer confused her more. "You act without calculation," she said one evening. "Without strategy, you simply help because helping is what you do." Is that strange to you? It is impossible. No species operates this way. Every action must have a purpose, a gain, a return. Sunho looked at her. "What would I gain from letting you die?" "Nothing, but what do you gain from keeping me alive?" "Also nothing, that is the point." Yura shook her head slowly. "I have ruled for over 400 years. I have met thousands of species across hundreds of star systems. I have never encountered anything like this." Sunho froze. 400 years. She realized her mistake too late. Something closed behind her eyes, walls going up. You said ruled, Sunho continued. Ruled what? It does not matter. Yura. I said it does not matter. Her voice was cold now, sharp as ice. You saved me. I am grateful, but my life before this crash is not your concern. Sunho did not push. He had learned long ago that some wounds could not be treated with medicine. Some wounds only healed with time. But Minyu was less patient. I ran a scan on the energy signature from her ship, he told Sunho privately. Do you know what I found? Tell me. It matches the royal fleet of the Galactic Sovereignty. The royal fleet, Sunho. As in, the empire that controls most of known space. As in, the empire that could destroy our entire planet without noticing. Sunho was quiet. Whoever she is, Minyu continued, she is important. Maybe a noble, maybe a military commander, maybe something worse. And someone tried to kill her, which means enemies might come looking. What do you want me to do? Throw her out? I want you to be careful. That night, Sunho found Yura standing outside the clinic. The storm had passed, and the stars were visible again. She stared up at them with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Sadness, deep and old and endless. I had forgotten, she said quietly, not turning around, what it feels like to be small. What do you mean? Up there among the stars, I am never small. I am always the largest thing in the room. Every decision I make changes the fate of billions. Every word I speak becomes law. She paused. But here, I am just a wounded woman who cannot even feed herself. Here, I have no power at all. Sunho stood beside her, looking up at the same stars. Is that a bad thing? He asked. Yura turned to look at him. For a moment, just a moment, her mask slipped. He saw something beneath it. Not a ruler, not a mystery, just a person, tired and alone, who had carried a weight too heavy for too long. I do not know, she whispered. I truly do not know. They stood together in silence, two small figures beneath an infinite sky. And for the first time, Yura did not feel the need to be anything more than what she was. The warships came on the 10th day. Sunho saw them first, dark shapes descending through the morning clouds like metal gods. There were 5 of them, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding the tiny outpost from all directions. Yura, he said, his voice calm despite everything, we have visitors. She was at the window in an instant, her face going pale. The markings on her skin, which had been glowing steadily brighter as she healed, suddenly flared with intense light. They found me, she whispered, faster than I expected. Friends or enemies? I do not know yet. The ships landed in a circle around the clinic. The ground shook with their weight. Doors opened and soldiers poured out. Hundreds of them. They were tall, armored in black and silver, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They moved with the discipline of an elite force, taking positions with practiced precision. Sunho had seen armies before. He had seen death before, but this was something else entirely. A single figure walked ahead of the soldiers. A woman, tall and fierce, with short dark hair and eyes like cold steel. She wore armor more ornate than the others, decorated with symbols that matched the ones on Yura's skin. She walked straight toward the clinic door without hesitation. Sunho moved to stand in the doorway. The woman stopped. Her eyes traveled over him with obvious disgust. A human, a primitive, an insect standing in her path. Move, she commanded. No, Sunho replied. The soldiers behind her raised their weapons. The woman's hand moved to her own blade. The tension in the air became thick enough to choke on. Do you know what I am, human? She asked. Someone with a lot of guns pointed at my home. I am Commander Jia of the Imperial Guard. I serve the Galactic Sovereignty, rulers of 900 star systems. I have killed more enemies than your species has years of history, and you dare stand in my way. My patient is still recovering. She is not ready to leave. Gia's eyes narrowed. Your patient, you speak of her as if she is some common wounded animal. All wounded people deserve care. That is what medics do. Something in Gia's expression shifted. Not respect, not quite, but something close to confusion. She had clearly expected fear. She had expected him to run, to beg, to fall to his knees. She had not expected calm defiance. Step aside, she said, or I will cut you down where you stand. Gia. The voice came from behind Sunho. Yura stepped forward, still weak, still bandaged, but standing straight with visible effort. The effect was immediate. Every soldier in sight dropped to their knees. Their heads bowed so low they nearly touched the ground. Even Gia, fierce and proud, fell into a deep bow. My Empress, Gia said, we have searched for you across 100 systems. When we received your emergency signal, we came as fast as the void would allow. Empress. The word hit Sunho like a physical blow. He turned to look at Yura. She was watching him, her expression unreadable. Rise, Commander, she said to Gia. Report. Gia stood but kept her head lowered. High Admiral Doyun has declared you dead. He claims your ship was destroyed by rebels. He has taken control of the Eastern Fleet and is gathering support among the noble houses. Civil war is coming, my Empress. Yura's face hardened. Doyun, I should have executed him years ago. There is more. He has evidence that you were attacked and weakened. He claims you are unfit to rule. The noble houses are wavering. What evidence? Gia hesitated. Her eyes flickered to Sunho, then back to Yura. He knows you were rescued by a human, that a human touched you, treated your wounds, handled your sacred blood. He is using this to prove you have been contaminated by lesser species. Yura's expression did not change. And what do you think, Commander? I think the sovereignty needs its Empress. I think you must return immediately and prove you are still strong. And I think, Gia glanced at Sunho again, her disgust clear. I think this human should be silenced before he can speak of what he has seen. Silenced, Sunho repeated. You mean killed. You touched the Empress. You saw her weak and wounded. Such knowledge cannot be allowed to spread. Sunho looked at Yura. Is that what you want? The question hung in the air. The soldiers watched. Gia watched. The entire universe seemed to hold its breath. Yura stepped forward, moving past Sunho until she stood directly in front of him. She was shorter than him by several inches. Up close, he could see how tired she was, how much standing upright was costing her. You tended my wounds, she said quietly. You cleaned my blood. You held me when I screamed in pain. You fed me your own food and gave me your only bed. Yes. Do you know what you were doing? Do you know who you were touching? Sunho met her eyes, those galaxy eyes, deep and ancient and filled with stars. I was touching a dying woman who needed help. Yura stared at him. Behind her, Gia made a sound of disbelief. I am not just a woman, Yura said. I am Empress Yura of the galactic sovereignty. I rule over 900 star systems and trillions of beings. My word is law across half the known universe. I am the queen of the galaxy. Sunho did not blink. And you were bleeding, dying, alone. None of those titles would have saved your life that night. Gia stepped forward, her hand on her weapon. How dare you speak to the Empress this way? Gia, Yura said, just her name, nothing more, but the commander froze instantly. Yura continued to watch Sunho. He could not read her expression. He did not know if she was angry or amused or something else entirely. You truly do not care, she said slowly. The throne, the power, the titles, none of it means anything to you. It means plenty, Sunho replied, but it does not change what happened. You were hurt, I helped, that is the whole story. A long silence followed. The wind blew across the empty landscape. Soldiers shifted nervously. Gia's face twisted with barely contained fury. Then Yura laughed. It was not a loud laugh, just a soft sound, almost surprised as if she had forgotten how, but it transformed her face completely. For one moment, she was not an empress. She was not a ruler of galaxies. She was just a woman who had heard something that genuinely amused her. 412 years, she said. I have lived for 412 years. I have met kings and generals and gods. And you, a human medic on a forgotten rock at the edge of space, are the first being who has ever spoken to me as simply a person. Is that bad? I do not know. She turned to face her soldiers, her voice shifting back to cold command. The human is under my protection. Anyone who harms him answers to me personally. Gia looked horrified. My empress, the noble houses will not accept this. Doyun will use it against you. Let him try. Yura looked back at Sunho. You saved my life when you had no reason to. Now I need you to do something much harder. What? Come with me. Leave this planet, leave human space, come to the heart of the sovereignty. Because if I leave you here, Doyun will send assassins the moment I am gone. You know too much. You have seen too much. Sunho considered this. His quiet life, his peaceful outpost, his escape from war and death and politics. All of it was already gone. It had been gone since the moment he climbed into that crashed ship. Minyu comes too, he said. Yura raised an eyebrow. Your friend, why? Because I am not leaving him alone on a planet that might be targeted, and because he is smarter than he looks. You might need him. Yura studied him for a moment, then she nodded. Very well. Bring your friend, medic. Let us see if human kindness can survive in the heart of darkness. She turned and walked toward the nearest warship, her soldiers forming ranks around her. Sunho watched her go. Behind him, Minyu appeared in the doorway. Did I just hear that correctly? We are going to the center of a galactic empire with an empress who has enemies trying to kill her. Yes. And you agreed to this? Yes. Minyu sighed deeply. I knew you would get us killed someday. I just thought it would take longer. Sunho smiled slightly. Pack your things, we leave in an hour. He looked up at the warships, at the soldiers, at the impossible future stretching out before him. He had come to this planet seeking quiet. He had found something else entirely. The Imperial flagship was larger than any city Sunho had ever seen. It stretched across the void like a floating mountain, covered in towers and weapons and glowing symbols. Thousands of smaller ships moved around it like fish around a whale. Inside, corridors of polished black stone wound through chambers filled with light and alien beauty. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small. It worked. Sunho walked behind Yura as she strode through her ship. Soldiers and servants bowed as she passed, pressing their foreheads to the floor. No one looked at her directly. No one spoke without permission. The fear in their eyes was genuine. This was her world, a world of absolute power and absolute control. You will have quarters near mine, Yura said without turning around. Gia will assign guards to your door. Guards to protect me or guards to keep me prisoner? Both. At least you are honest. She stopped and turned to face him. They were alone in the corridor, the nearest soldiers too far away to hear. You do not belong here, she said quietly. You know that. Everyone on this ship knows that. They look at you and see a primitive creature who should be cleaning floors, not walking beside their empress. What do you see? Yura was silent for a moment. I see someone who confuses me, and I do not like being confused. She turned and continued walking. Sunho followed. The days that followed were an education in galactic politics. Sunho learned that the sovereignty controlled over 900 star systems, each ruled by noble houses who answered to the Empress. He learned that Yura's species, the Aelith, lived for thousands of years and possessed abilities humans would call magic. He learned that most of the galaxy considered humans barely above animals, a young species too primitive to matter. He also learned that High Admiral Doyun was moving fast. Reports came daily. Doyun had secured 3 major noble houses. His fleet was growing. His message was spreading. The Empress had been wounded, saved by a human touched by lesser hands. She was contaminated, weak, unfit to rule. "He is smart," Minyu said one evening. They had been given connected chambers, small but comfortable. "He is not attacking her power directly. He is attacking her image, making her seem less than divine." Sunho nodded. "Can she fight back?" "She needs to prove she is still strong. But that is hard to do when half her court thinks she is broken." The court was the worst part. Yura held audiences every day, meeting with nobles and generals and representatives from 100 worlds. They came with gifts and flattery, but Sunho saw the truth beneath their smiles. They were measuring her, testing her, watching for weakness. And they looked at Sunho with open contempt. "Human pet," he heard them whisper, "the Empress keeps a primitive in her chambers. Has she fallen so far?" Commander Jia did not help matters. She tolerated Sunho because Yura commanded it, but her disgust was obvious. She questioned his presence at every meeting, objected to his access to restricted areas, and made it clear she considered him a mistake. "You endanger her," Jia told him one night. "Every moment you stand beside her, you prove Doyun's point. She keeps you because she feels obligated. A true soldier would remove himself from the situation." "I did not ask to be here." "Then leave." "And go where? You said yourself that Doyun would kill me if I returned to human space." Jia had no answer for that. But something was changing. Sunho began to notice things, small things, a servant who smiled at him in the corridors, a guard who nodded with something that might have been respect, whispers that were not entirely hostile. "You are becoming a legend," Minyu explained. "The human who talked back to the Empress, the human who refused to bow, the human who looked at the Queen of the Galaxy and saw just a woman. People do not know what to do with that." "Is that good or bad?" "Depends on who you ask." 2 weeks after their arrival, the second assassination attempt came. It happened at dinner. Yura ate alone in her chambers as always, with only Sunho and Jia present. The food was tested before serving, examined by 3 different security measures, but someone had found a way around them. Sunho saw it first, a slight change in Yura's breathing, a tremble in her hand as she lifted her cup, a faint sheen of sweat on her pale skin. "Stop," he said sharply, "put down the cup." Yura froze. Jia's hand went to her weapon. "The tea," Sunho continued. "Something is wrong." Jia grabbed the cup and smelled it, her face twisted. "I cannot detect anything." "I can." Her heart rate is elevated. Her pupils are dilated and her hand is shaking. She has been poisoned. Yura looked at him with those galaxy eyes. Already, her breathing was becoming harder. "How do you know these things?" she asked. "Because I am a medic. Now tell me what happens when your species is poisoned. What are the symptoms? What kills you?" Jia stepped forward. "We must get her to the medical bay." "The medical bay is 10 minutes away. If this is fast-acting, she does not have 10 minutes. Sunho was already moving, pulling open cabinets, searching for anything useful. "Talk to me. What kind of poisons affect your species?" "There are dozens," Jia said, without knowing which one. "Her veins are turning silver. Is that normal?" Both women looked down. Thin lines of silver were spreading across Yura's arms, visible beneath her skin. "Voidbane," Jia whispered. "It attacks the blood directly. We have no cure." "Then we slow it down. What thins Aelith blood?" "What?" "Your blood is thicker than human blood. The poison is probably spreading through it faster than it would through ours. If we thin the blood, we slow the spread." Jia stared at him. "I do not know. I am a soldier, not a physician." Sunho turned to Yura. "Empress, you have lived for 400 years. You must know something about your own biology." Yura's face was pale, her breathing labored, but she forced herself to focus. "Heat. High temperatures thin our blood. It is why we avoid desert worlds." That was enough. Sunho grabbed a heating unit from the wall and turned it to maximum. He stripped off Yura's outer robe, ignoring Jia's protest, and wrapped the heating element around her arm where the silver lines were thickest. "This will hurt," he said. "Do it." He activated the heat. Yura screamed. The silver lines slowed, then stopped spreading, but they were still there, still deadly. "This only buys time," Sunho said. "We need the real medical team." Jia was already calling for backup. Soldiers burst through the door. Sunho was pushed aside as they lifted Yura and carried her out. He followed, running through corridors that had become a maze of panic. Alarms were sounding. Guards were everywhere. Someone was shouting about traitors, about securing the ship, about war. In the medical bay, Aelith physicians worked on Yura with technology Sunho could not understand. He stood in the corner, watching, helpless. Minyu found him there an hour later. "She is stable," Minyu said. "They managed to filter the poison from her blood. She will live." Sunho let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. "The word is spreading," Minyu continued. "Everyone knows what happened. Everyone knows you saw the signs before the security systems did. Everyone knows you acted while others hesitated." "I just did what any medic would do." "That is exactly the point." Minyu sat down beside him. "You keep doing impossible things and acting like they are normal. That is driving them crazy." Later that night, Jia came to his chambers. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, her face unreadable. "I have protected the Empress for 200 years, she said finally. "I have killed for her. I have bled for her. I thought I knew what loyalty meant." She took a step forward. "But tonight, when she was dying, I froze. I did not know what to do. You acted without hesitation. You touched her sacred body without permission because you knew it would save her life. That took courage I did not expect from a human." Sunho said nothing. "I still do not like you," Jia continued. "I still think you are dangerous, but I understand now why she keeps you close." She paused. "Thank you for saving her." She left without waiting for a response. Sunho sat alone in the darkness, thinking about empresses and assassins and a galaxy that did not want him. He had come to Aerith 7 to escape death. Now he was surrounded by it again, and somehow he was the only one who kept pushing it back. The Hall of Ascension was built to make gods feel small. It rose from the capital world like a spear aimed at the heavens, taller than mountains, older than human civilization. Inside, 1,000 pillars held up a ceiling lost in darkness. Floating platforms carried representatives from every corner of the sovereignty. Trillions watched through broadcast systems that spanned galaxies. This was where emperors and empresses proved their right to rule. This was where Doyon had called Yura to face judgment. Sunho stood at the edge of the central platform, trying not to look at the endless drop below. Beside him, Minyu was equally uncomfortable. "If I fall from here," Minyu whispered, "I want you to know that I blame you entirely." "Noted." Yura stood at the center of the platform, dressed in armor that shone like captured starlight. Her wounds had healed. The markings on her skin blazed with power. She looked every inch the goddess her people believed her to be. But Sunho had seen her bleeding on the floor of a crashed ship. He had heard her scream in pain. He knew the truth beneath the image. Across the vast space, Doyon waited on his own platform. He was tall and sharp-featured, his silver hair swept back from a face that had never known kindness. Behind him stood the fleet commanders and noble houses who had joined his cause. They looked confident. They looked hungry. "Citizens of the sovereignty," Doyon's voice echoed through the hall. "We gather today because our empress has been compromised. She was attacked, wounded, and left for dead. And who saved her? Not her guards, not her fleet, A human, a primitive creature from a primitive species. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sunho felt thousands of eyes turn toward him. She allowed this human to touch her sacred body, Doyun continued. She allowed him to handle her blood, to see her weakness, to witness her failure. And now she brings him into the heart of our empire like a pet. Is this the strength we expect from our ruler? Is this the dignity of the sovereignty? More murmurs. Sunho saw nobles nodding. He saw doubt spreading like poison. The Empress is contaminated, Doyun declared. She is no longer fit to rule. I call for the trial of ascension. Let the people decide who should lead them into the future. The crowd erupted. Some cheered for Doyun. Others shouted in support of Yura. The noise was overwhelming, a tidal wave of voices crashing against the ancient walls. Yura raised her hand. Silence fell instantly. You accuse me of weakness, she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the hall. You claim I am contaminated because a human saved my life. Very well. Let me tell you about that human. She turned to look at Sunho. Everyone followed her gaze. His name is Sunho. He is a medic, not a soldier, not a noble, not a politician. A healer. When my ship crashed on his world, he had no idea who I was. He saw only a dying woman in the wreckage. She began to walk toward the center of the platform, her voice rising. He could have reported the crash and waited for authorities. He could have stayed safe in his home while I bled to death. He could have done what any sensible person would do in his position. Instead, he climbed into a burning ship, pulled me out, and spent 3 days keeping me alive. The hall was completely silent now. He gave me his food. He gave me his bed. He cleaned my wounds and held me when I screamed. And when I finally told him who I was, do you know what he said? She stopped and turned to face the crowd directly. He said I was bleeding. He said that was enough reason to help. He did not care about my title. He did not care about my power. He cared only that someone was hurt and needed him. Doyun laughed. Pretty words, Empress, but they prove my point. You were reduced to depending on a primitive. You were so weak that you needed a human to survive. No, Yura's voice turned cold. I was saved by something you will never understand. Something no one in this hall has offered me in 400 years. She looked out at the assembled nobles, the generals, the representatives of 1,000 worlds. Kindness, she said, pure, simple kindness, without calculation, without expectation, without demand for return. She pointed at Doyun. When did you last show kindness, Admiral? When did any of you? You scheme and plot and betray. You bow to me because you fear my power. You serve me because you want rewards. But not one of you has ever helped me simply because I needed help. Doyun's smile faltered. You call humans primitive, Yura continued. You dismiss them as lesser creatures. But this one human showed me more genuine care in 10 days than I have received from my own people in 4 centuries. If that is primitive, then perhaps we need more primitives in this galaxy. Enough, Doyun's composure cracked. This is sentimentality. This is weakness disguised as philosophy. The trial of ascension is not won by speeches. It is won by proof, and I have proof of your failure. He gestured and holographic images appeared in the air. Yura's crashed ship, her wounded body, Sunho's hands covered in silver blood. This is what your Empress has been reduced to, Doyun declared. Look at her. Look at how far she has fallen. Sunho watched the images. He saw himself working through the night, desperate and exhausted, doing everything he could to save a stranger's life. And suddenly, he understood something important. May I speak? He asked. The question was so unexpected that even Doyun fell silent. A human asking to address the trial of ascension. It had never happened before. Yura nodded slightly. Sunho stepped forward. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. You see those images as proof of weakness, he said. I see something different. I see an empress who survived an assassination attempt that was meant to kill her. I see a ruler who was shot down, burned, broken, and left for dead in the middle of nowhere. And I see her standing here today, alive and strong. He turned to look at Doyun directly. You sent assassins, you poisoned her, you tried twice to kill her and twice you failed. Is that weakness, Admiral, or is that something else entirely? Doyun's face darkened. You know nothing, human. I know you are afraid. Sunho took another step forward. I know that a man who was confident in his victory would not need to assassinate his opponent. I know that everything you have done proves how dangerous you consider her. And I know that my friend has been very busy while you were making speeches. Minyu stepped forward, holding a small device. His usual nervous expression had been replaced by something sharper. Human communication systems are primitive, Minyu said. Everyone keeps telling us that. What they forget is that primitive systems use different protocols. Protocols that your advanced encryption cannot detect. He activated the device. A recording played through the hall. Doyun's voice, unmistakable, giving orders to sabotage the Empress's ship, discussing poison types with his conspirators, naming the noble houses who had agreed to support his treason. The hall exploded into chaos. Guards moved toward Doyun. The noble houses he had named began shouting denials. His fleet commanders stepped back, distancing themselves from the evidence. In seconds, his coalition collapsed. Doyun stood alone on his platform, surrounded by enemies. This is a trick, he snarled. Human fabrication. The encryption signatures are genuine, Jia announced. She had appeared on the platform armed and ready. My analysts have confirmed it. The recordings are real. Doyun reached for his weapon, but he was too slow. Imperial guards surrounded him, forcing him to his knees. Yura walked forward until she stood over her fallen enemy. You wanted to rule the galaxy, she said. You thought strength meant power and cruelty and control, but you missed something important. She looked back at Sunho. The human did not defeat you with weapons or armies. He defeated you by being underestimated. You dismissed him as primitive. You ignored him as irrelevant, and that blindness destroyed you. She turned to face the assembled trillions, her voice rising to fill the hall. Let this be a lesson to all who watch. Humanity is not a lesser species to be ignored. They are something far more dangerous. They are kind. They are stubborn. They see past titles and power to the truth beneath. And in a universe built on fear and manipulation, that makes them revolutionary. She raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. Sunho of Earth, you saved my life asking nothing in return. You stood beside me when doing so made you a target. You showed my empire what it had forgotten. So I offer you something no human has ever received. She extended her hand toward him. A place at my side, not as a servant, not as a pet, as an equal, as a bridge between your people and mine. Sunho looked at her hand. He thought about his quiet clinic on Aerith 7, his peaceful life, his escape from war and death. Then he thought about what that life had actually been, hiding, running, pretending the universe would leave him alone if he ignored it long enough. He took her hand. I am still just a medic, he said. Yura smiled. It was small but real. And I was just a dying woman in a crashed ship. You did not care about titles then. Why start now? The hall erupted in cheers. Somewhere behind him, Sunho heard Minyu laughing. Commander Jia stood at attention, her face showing something that might have been approval. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant. A galaxy of 900 systems, trillions of beings, countless species older and more powerful than humanity. But today, they had learned an important lesson. Kindness was not weakness. Compassion was not primitive. And sometimes, the smallest person in the room could change everything simply by treating others the way they deserve to be treated. Sunho stood beside the Queen of the Galaxy, and for the first time since the colony wars, he did not feel like running. He was exactly where he was meant to be.